Okay, so while I gather wood for my eventual Mistlands co-op base, I wanted to talk about a variety of things today. The first thing I wanted to talk about was meta balancing, which is a weird thing that pretty much every game designer has to tango with, especially when doing a lot of somewhat historic weaponry. There's always the mechanical side of balance, so, are your weapons somewhat equal in strength? Does everything have a niche or a general use or both? You know? And that's important, but there are also other things to consider. And those things are on the line of meta balancing. Specifically the aesthetics, which is more along the lines of dev intended balancing. Like how unbalanced do you want certain things to be based off of your own designs? So an example of that would be the Frostner. You can tell that the Frostner sort of designed to look amazing, right? I think the devs specifically wanted this to look amazing. Now, I know it's like everybody has their own personal taste when it comes to aesthetics, but I can comfortably say like that the devs wanted the Crystal Battle Axe to look good, and the devs wanted the Frostner to look good, and they wanted certain other things like the Draugr to look good, and while I do personally think that they succeeded on this, I love the look of all of these things. Where the balancing comes in is, does the dev intended aesthetics match the mechanics? So is the dev intended beautiful and special weapons, are they actually special mechanically? Does the gameplay reflect the aesthetic design? And that's part of meta balancing. So Frostner, wild success. Crystal Battle Axe, success, because Crystal Battle Axe is just really good at tree farm chopping, and it's a nice, like, really good multiplayer weapon. If you've ever seen my Sentinel Shack, you know that it's situationally excellent in fulling camps, and that's just a lot of fun. Furthermore, wood chopping in general, I mean, this thing is a royal beast. Especially with really high wood chopping levels, and the Elder, if you have the Elder power on, there's nothing that can quite compare. I mean, it costs a lot of stamina, so there's your mechanical balance compared to, like, one-handed axes, and then in the Mistlands, they had the one-handed axe do a little downward swipe, which is nice. Won't say anything more about the Mistlands, but, yeah, overall, they had Frostner. They wanted it to look special, and they wanted it to be special mechanic-wise. And it is. It is both of those things, which is really nice. Where's my cart? So they've succeeded in that regard, and it's a good example of meta balancing. Another really good example of meta balancing would be conceptual balance. So, sure, you want things even in power, relatively even, but something that could influence that mechanical balance and shift it a little bit in a dev's perspective are concepts of certain weapon types. Okay, is the concept of a polearm as a weapon better than the concept generally of a one-handed axe? Yes, absolutely. Historical dominance shows this. I mean, conceptually, the polearm is even better than a spear. It's literally just a spear plus anything else. It's like, okay, Well, you have the same primary function, but now you have a little secondary function. So obviously the polearms are going to be a little bit better than the spears conceptually. You know? It's basically like 2 is better than 1. And so you have this conceptual balance where the spear historically was very good because it was very cheap, and if you actually had the resources, then you would go for the polearm of any kind. This is what you see historically. You see very specific historical units just absolutely crush it with polearms instead of just spears. Like, I'll name one example that's not particularly like Viking, but like the English Forest Bill and the units that used those in the British forests were just top notch, and that's because they had that hooked blade that was extremely good for maneuvering the dense shrubbery and dense forest, and that allowed them a geographical and logistics advantage, as well as having this nice blade that can come down on enemies should you need it. Of course, it also has that hooking advantage, so you can disarm people. Conceptually, it's going to be much stronger than just your one-handed axe. Very, very good. And a spear. And so I don't mind that in the game, considering that they do, in fact, take somewhat historical precedent into account. You know, can't forget that spears in Valheim have that awful hitbox, right? You know, that primary attack is god awful. But hey, polearms better than one-handed axes in combat, better than spears in combat. And while this isn't perfectly mechanically balanced, you know, all weapons aren't equal. These weapons, well, they kind of feel right. It's conceptually right for them to be weaker than your polearm. And so I really don't mind these weapons being weaker on terms of mechanical balancing. Now that's a subjective thing. Like, you can feel however you want on this. Like, I think the devs are taking this into account, and historically, on the historical side, it is somewhat objective, but there are a lot of very gamified ways that you can change this. So it does come down to personal opinion while game designing, you know? It's like, okay, you know, the way that we swing things, especially considering with a shield, is very silly. You know, just having the shield be around here, but that's sacrificed due to game mechanical balance, right? So we sacrifice some conceptual balance in some areas for the mechanical balance, and then we reinforce conceptual balance in other areas at the cost of mechanical balance. So there's a tug and there's a push and pull going on there. Now, with these three things in mind, mechanical balance, conceptual balance, and aesthetic balance, I have gone and done a variety of like older style analysis videos on certain weapons, and usually I'm like pretty critical. So my first of these was the good old serpent scale shield video, where I was like, this is clearly, like, you guys are clearly trying to make this like aesthetically different and special, but this is terrible. Like, why is this like this? Like, it's probably going to be rebalanced time and time again, because it's already been rebalanced. Like, it's been made and it's been rebalanced, and both times it was not very good. Like, it's still not very good. And I think by the time the Oceans update comes out, however long into the future that is, it's going to change. So it's going to be rebalanced into something worthwhile, but clearly at the time, and right now, it is not very good. It does not match. The mechanical, conceptual, and aesthetic balance is completely off on that shield. Like, I mean, it's a kite shield. It is a lovely, lovely mechanical shield. I mean, conceptual as well. Like, Conceptual, I mean. Conceptually, the shield is phenomenal. Kite shields are super good, historically. Now, is it mechanically good? No. No, it's not. You know, throw on the root harness and then you're fine. And you don't need to be slowed down 15%, right? Completely unnecessary. Throw on a parry shield and you're styling. You know, parry shield Frostner, root harness into planes. You're styling, right? Yeah. So it's totally unnecessary. It looks beautiful, but the mechanics are off. So you have this push and pull where everything isn't totally right. And then spears is another thing where there are certain ways which you can balance the spear so that it is a little bit better on the mechanical side, but still probably worse than the polearm, right? Conceptually. But at least it doesn't have that conceptually god-awful, regular, underhanded, not underhanded, overhand attack animation. That is terrible. The range on that is just about equal to the knife. Like, that's absurd. Why is it like that for the spear? Like, it should have a relatively decent regular attack animation. And it can still be weaker than the polearm because, well, this at-gear middle mouse with its 6 times damage to stagger modifier is not going to be outdone by spear having good pokes, you know? Not going to be exactly outdone by that. So there you have it, sort of weird ideas and examples surrounding like meta balancing, keeping the knowledge of historical conceptual balance, aesthetic balance from dev intentions perspective, and then mechanics, how they actually function in the game. Keeping all of these 3 things in mind, very important, very good. And with that in mind, let's now go off the rails a little bit, okay? Let's go into happy, fun time, hypothetical chaos mode, where we sort of disregard all of that and we enter more fantastical periods. Because, well, if you've seen the Mistlands trailer, we are heading away from conceptual balance in regards to like polearms being better than spears or one-handed axes, or even your swords. And we are heading into the territory of more like Frostner, shall we say, with how Frostner is like a nice magic weapon. You know, it's got this mystical property to it, and that's the concept. And so, considering the aesthetics and the concept being mystical, you would expect it to be very good mechanically. And it is. It's very strong. The slowdown effect is mind-blowingly good. Some people have been saying it's really good in the Mistlands even, which doesn't surprise me at all, although we won't really know how true that is until extensive testing is done. And boy oh boy, with my Clubs 100 character will I do extensive testing. However, there are things which are, well, very mystical, shall we say, and a lot of them, shall we say. And it's going to be interesting to see how the concepts are balanced and represented in meta balancing, in the mechanics. How are the concepts and the aesthetics going to be represented? Because personally, I think a lot of them are all they're all very, very nice looking, and I think they are supposed to look that way by the devs. So maybe they will all be very powerful. I don't know how it's going to stack up and how it's going to compare to standard weaponry. I know that I talked about swaps in my theory video. That's probably going to be very good, switching out from certain mystical things to maybe a non-mystical thing, specifically the at gear, because what a joy of a swap this is. And then also, I mean, let's talk already bow and frost arrow, because this is already very much mystical, almost spell slinging type of deal, where you were just rapid firing out these slow down, incredible projectiles that just have immense mechanical use. The concept is mystical and historical because bows are incredible. Bow and arrow, you know, crossbow, that's all very good. Historically, conceptually. But yeah, we're diving into a multi-conceptual weapon type in terms of meta balancing. So it's like, well, you consider the idea that shooting out magical projectiles that slow things down is probably going to be extremely effective conceptually, and ranged attacks are very good conceptually, and the aesthetic of the Draugr and Huntsman bow are very good conceptually, or not aesthetically. The aesthetics are very nice, therefore the mechanics should be amazing. They should be incredible to match, and they are. So I think going forward, keep these things in mind when testing out the Mistlands. Does the aesthetic and conceptual great ideas of these weapons, of these tools, match the mechanics? Do the concepts match the mechanics? Does the mechanics match the concepts and the aesthetics? Ask yourself that when testing things out. That's going to be very important in terms of balancing in the future. Very, very important. But let's go even deeper into Fantasyland. Ooh, deeper into potential land. So this is stuff that we're not even probably ever going to see. Maybe in like the late game, like Deep North. But I doubt it, because very strong. And this is, I want to talk about what my theoretical most interesting favorite mob would be, and my theoretical most effective aesthetic and conceptual, my best weapon. What would that be? All right. So theoretical best mob. It doesn't really exist right now. But let's say this mob would look really cool. It would be thrillingly challenging, so probably a mini boss of sorts, or a tough enemy like your troll, your abomination. I would say it would be potentially starred, so extra thrill there. And then I would also slap on some amazing drops that would be ingredients for a lot of amazing different things, so several things. Whether that be like a weapon, a good weapon, or a really good utility thing, or just something around the house. The closest thing that we have right now is the Abomination, because it drops a root, which is really good for root armor, which is a phenomenal armor set. It's just phenomenal. All the pieces are good, except for, well, the leggings, which are just part of the set. But the set bonus is incredible. The Harnesk, couldn't give this thing enough love if I tried, and I do try. Look at this. Look at that. It's beautiful. I love the way this thing looks. And it's mechanically amazing. And the concept of it is clean as hell. Love it. Love it. Love it. Beautiful. So, it would also drop something for a decoration. So, Abominations have Guck and the Abomination Trophy. I would also like if the theoretical best mob would drop a trophy that is really good, really looks good to be hung up. Maybe it glows in some way, you know. But it's also really good in a recipe. Maybe a nice weapon of some sort. You know how the Draugr Elite Trophy, it's got the glowing purple eye, but it's also really good because it's used in this Iron Sledge recipe. And the Iron Sledge is very nice in some niche areas, which, I mean, there are a lot of these niche areas, so great utility there. Love that Draugr Elite Trophy. Draugr Elites, I mean, they drop entrails. They are a tough enemy. They come in stars. The trophy looks good. The trophy's used in a good recipe. Draugr Elites are pretty damn well-designed mobs. Love Draugr Elites. Love Abominations. If Falling Berserker trophies could be used in a recipe of some sort, Falling Berserkers would also be, like, on the upper echelon of things. Covers all those bases. Can be starred as tough, menacing, thrilling enemy to fight. Love it. Love it. But yeah, that theoretical mob where everything is just perfect and challenging and rewarding and beautiful and thrilling might exist come Mistlands, it might not. Could be a Deep North thing, could be Ashlands thing, we don't know yet. I trust the devs, they'll probably include something like that eventually, right? However, they probably won't include my theoretical best weapon. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's talk damage typing for a moment. My damage preferably would be pure frost and lightning. Both of them. Probably split even down the middle. And it would be on a either a sword or an Atgear. So, why do I say sword or Atgear, and why those two? Why those two types? Sword. I say sword even though I'm not really a sword guy, because the sword has low knockback, which is very combo friendly. It also has a decent poke, so you can space things out with the middle mouse, although it's a lot harder than just poking with the Atgear, but I'll get there. It could be paired with a parry shield if you so desire, or something else in your offhand. Maybe. It's also just something that is decently quick, it's got good damage, and it doesn't slow you down that much at all. So you combine all of these things with the slowdown of the frost and the staggering of lightning, and you slap on that water weakness where wet mobs take 1.5 lightning and frost damage, and you have yourself a spicy weapon that's capable of control with the slowdown from frost and DPS with the fact that it's a sword and staggering with the lightning damage. Yeah, it's theoretically beyond OP. But of course it would look beautiful, and it's conceptually so cool, so the meta balance is all there, but I don't know if it would ever exist. Let's also talk about the potential of it being an Atgear. I mean, that would be just gorgeous. Like, the concept of Atgear, of magical lightning Atgear, I would already want and love that in the first place. It's very easy to imagine this thing looking like a lightning bolt, and potentially having some frozen blades. I mean, just like ice in a blade, looking like a sword or a knife or anything. Gorgeous, beautiful. I know they can make it look. Oops. I know they can make it look beautiful. I have full trust in Debs Grimcore and Lisa, the 2D concept artists and 3D game artists, respectively. These two in particular are mind-blowingly good. I also have full trust in new shader artist, Andrea. She is doing such a wonderful job already. You know, you see this new splash animation in the Mistlands? See this? That's her, most likely. So, I like that. So I have full trust in the three of them to make this look gorgeous. Full trust that everything's going to look beautiful. Conceptually, I mean, it's a magic sword or a magic polearm. Hello, you know. It's very sound. Very, very sound. Like, of course it's going to be strong. Hello? And then mechanically, I've already said, like, oh, what an absolute beast those weapons would be. The only balancing thing that I could think of would be like a relatively low durability, but you can just go repair shit whenever you want for free, so that's fine, you know? That is perfectly a-okay with me. So, this long, rambly video where I decided to go over 3 topics. Let me know what your ideal mob would be. Let me know what your ideal weapon would be. And I'll see you guys some other time. Bye.